Alright, let's talk about Wild West. Hollywood sold you a fantasy of dusty streets, high noon duels, and lone gunslinger having epic shootouts over card game. The reality, it was less exciting and way more bureaucratic. The real Wild West was less about quick draws and more about quick claims, tedious paperwork, and soul-crushing committee meetings. Let's start with the gunfighter. The idea of a professional hired gun who roamed the West dueling rivals is mostly a myth. The reality is that being a gunman was a terrible, unstable career. Most guys who were good with gun had actual jobs, like being a lawman or range hand. The lone wolf drifter was usually just unemployed, and for those famous duels they were incredibly rare. In reality, if you wanted to kill someone, you didn't challenge them to a fair fight at high noon, you shoot them in a back from a dark alley when no one was looking. It was more cowardly ambush than heroic showdown. The most famous gunfight of all, the OK Corral, lasted about 30 seconds and was a messy, close-guarded brawl that ended in confusing court case. So if they weren't gunfighting, what they were doing? Arguing endlessly. The single most violent and constant conflict in West wasn't between outlaws and sheriffs, it was over land and war. Forget dramatic showdowns, the most dangerous event in town's history was often a land claim meeting. These weren't settled with bullets, they were settled with surveys, maps, confusing deeds, and endless legal battles in dusty courtrooms. People spent years and their life savings fighting over who owned which dusty path of grass or had the rights to trickle of a creek. It was less high noon and more HOA meeting from hell. And the government, it was everywhere. The idea of lawless frontier is a joke. The West was a gridlock nightmare of bureaucracy. To do anything, mine for gold, start a farm, build a fence, you had to navigate a mountain of federal, state, and local regulations. You needed permits, you needed to file claims, you needed to pay taxes. The West was tamed not by a gunslinger but by the relentless, soul-crushing advance of paperwork. The most feared man in town wasn't the outlaw, it was the federal land agent who could invalidate your claim with a signature. Even the savage Indian wars were less about spontaneous skirmishes and more about a slow, grinding, bureaucratic process of broken treaties, forced relocations, and congressional debates. The violence was real, but it was the end result of a massive paper-pushing government machine that was slowly and systematically squeezing Native Americans off their own land. So the next time you picture the Wild West, don't think of Clint Eastwood squinting in the sun. Think of a frustrated farmer in a 3-hour meeting trying to prove his water rights to a panel of board officials. The real Wild West wasn't one with a 6-shooter, it was one with a property deed and patience to sit through a mind-numbingly boring zoning hearing. It wasn't a frontier of freedom, it was a frontier of forms.